Monday, July 20th starts as a typical day for Mary Yoder. She gets up, heads to the office. She sees her first patient somewhere about 8 a.m. On that day, she'd planned to go have lunch with her mother. However, when she got to her mother's house, her mother had already eaten. So she comes back to the office and she has a shake that afternoon, protein shake, and that would have been her lunch.
By the end of that day, she's calling her husband, Bill, saying, "Don't get dinner ready for me because I feel horrible right now. I'm not going to be eating." That night, Mary barges through the door, running for the bathroom, vomiting. She has diarrhea. By morning, she just looks like she's on her deathbed. And he says immediately, I put her in the car and we head off to the emergency room. They ran several tests. It wasn't the flu. It wasn't any of the comic stomach bugs going around.
She starts having cardiac events in the middle of the night. They resuscitate her with a defibrillator that goes on several times where they actually restart her heart and bring her back. Mary Yoder went through living hell for the last 36 hours of her life. Present at the hospital when Mary does pass away is her husband, Bill, all three of her children, along with Caitlin Conley, who's the office manager, and her son's on-again, off-again girlfriend.
The question is immediately, what happened? And doctors go to Bill Yoder and say, listen, this is really strange and we want to get your permission to send her body for an autopsy. And Bill says right away, absolutely. I want to know what's going on here.
The autopsy was performed by Dr. Kenneth Clark out at the Onondaga County Medical Examiner's Office. And as he's looking under slides of cells from her individual organs, the cells appear like they are killing themselves. And that is his first clue that something may have been introduced into the body that actually caused this death. So Dr. Clark initially orders blood tests on certain heavy metals and the typical poisons like an arsenic, cyanides, and they all come back negative.
Now he's baffled. He knows that she's been poisoned, but he doesn't know how, and that's so important.
By this time, Mary's body has been released back to the family and cremated. Dr. Clark has only one vial of her blood that can be tested. He needs to make it count.
He reaches out for Upstate Poison Control and Dr. Gina Marafa. And based upon the timetable of events of when Mary becomes symptomatic to the time of death, along with the cardiac events she is leaning on, that is a typical colchicine poisoning.
Colchicine is a medicine commonly administered in low doses to treat gout. But in higher doses, it can be lethal.
With the last vial of blood, they do a test.
Almost 2 months after Mary's death, they get the results.
It comes back positive for colchicine. It's definitely a unique intoxication or poison death. So to have something this unique is a little bit odd.
2 letters show up. One shows up to the medical examiner's office. One shows up to the sheriff's department. It's the same anonymous letter.
The letter directs us to one person and one person only, and that's Adam Yoder, Mary Yoder's youngest son. He said now the colchicine container is under the front passenger side of his Jeep. That's where he said it was until he figures out where to dispose of it next. That letter specifically blamed Adam Yoder. So our people of interest in this case are Bill Yoder, and obviously once we receive the anonymous letter, it becomes Adam Yoder.
Ben Amy believes the author of the letter knows more than they're letting on.
I make a phone call to Adam, tell him that I'm investigating the death of his mother, and ask him if he'll come to the office for an interview. We actually watch for him arriving at the office. He does drive the Jeep that's mentioned in the anonymous letter.
Adam Yoder and his mother, Mary, were extremely close. Adam loved his mother. His mother loved him. That's clear.
Approximately a couple hours into the interview, we explain the scenario about how we received this letter, and we want to look into his Jeep. Another investigator, Investigator Simmons, is searching in the exact spot the letter tells us, under the front seat. Adam is smoking a cigarette, watching, and all of a sudden Investigator Simmons pulls out the bottle of colchicine. Adam was standing there, and I think the cigarette almost fell out of his mouth. He was definitely surprised. He didn't expect us to go out there and find anything in his vehicle. The bottle of colchicine was in a cardboard wrapper. There was also a receipt next to the bottle of colchicine. The receipt contained a lot of personal information about Adam Yoder, and the address that it was shipped to, the chiropractic family office his parents own.
They also find an email address on the receipt.
Mr. Adam Yoder, 1990 Gmail address. He goes, but that's not my email address. We then go back into the interview room and continue asking him questions.
Adam denies any involvement in his mother's death. He says he wasn't even in town when she got sick.
We had subpoenaed his Easy Pass prior to that, and when he gives us his explanation of where he was, it's the exact same as what the Easy Pass identifies. When I ask him, do you know of anybody who would want to cause harm to your mom, he does not point the finger at anybody. He seriously does not believe that anybody would want to cause harm to Mary Yoder. We ask Adam, is this something you think your dad might be capable of, trying to frame you? And Adam was like, absolutely not. That would not happen.
To learn more about Bill, investigators turn to Mary and Bill's office manager, Caitlin Conley.
She was Adam's girlfriend, and she integrated herself into the Yoder family.
Caitlin says she doesn't think Bill had anything to do with Mary's murder, but she doesn't know for sure. There is someone else, though, whose behavior she has found troubling.
We start specifically talking about her relationship with Adam.
It becomes clear to investigator Van Namey that Caitlin and Adam have a difficult and stormy relationship.
She talks about how you can't protect me and how she's scared of Adam, and that's specific to what the letter mentions. And light goes off in my head, and at that point, I ask her if she's the author of the anonymous letter. When she didn't give me a no as an answer, that's an automatic flag for an investigator to ask the question again. I again said, if you're the author, we need to know, did you write that anonymous letter that we got? And she stated that she did. And then she went from a witness to all the way to a suspect.
One of the things that we found immediately during the examination of Caitlin Conley's cell phone was the Mr. Adam Yoder 1990 at gmail.com email address had been added to her personal cell phone as an account on the phone.
This was the same email address used to purchase the colchicine found in Adam's car.
The final piece of evidence is the DNA on the cardboard wrapper around the colchicine bottle. It comes back to Caitlin Conley, nobody else.
DNA from the stamp on the anonymous letter also matches Caitlin Conley. Investigator Van Namey has no witnesses to point to his prime suspect. All his evidence is circumstantial. But with the DNA hits on Caitlin Conley, he's ready to bring charges. Nearly a year after Mary's murder, police arrest Caitlin, and a grand jury indicts her on charges of second-degree murder.
The community's reaction to Katie's arrest, some of them respond to this by saying, oh my God, there's no way this young 22-year-old pretty girl could have done this. They're just astonished.
We could find that letter was composed on one of the computers at the chiropractic office, and we can show iterations of the letter. We can show when it was only a paragraph long. We could show when it was 2 paragraphs long. We can also show that it got edited. The original form of the letter is not the form it took at the end.
The letter is the first piece of evidence the prosecution presents.
The receipt for the colchicine that was found in Adam's car has a lot of information on it. We know that it was purchased from Art Chemical. They actually are able to interview the actual person that processed that order. She had to reach out for the person that was placing this order, and that when she made the phone call to the business, she spoke to a woman, a young woman with a very soft voice. We know that the colchicine was purchased through a Gmail account, Mr. Adam Yoder, 1990@gmail.com. Every time that Gmail account was created, accessed, or terminated, it was through a device that was connected directly to Caitlin Conley.
That circumstance of her phone being connected to colchicine in some way, shape, or form becomes much less important when other people have access to it.
When she saw that he really was moving on, and I think it was at that point that she just decided, I'm going to take from him what he loves most in this world, which is his mother. We know that Mary would have had a protein shake for lunch. We suspect that she either prepared that protein shake for Mary and gave it to her, or maybe put it in the protein powder.
I wish that I could tell you that the office of the district attorney had some motive attributable to Katie, but there simply was none. Nobody truly knows exactly what happened or how it happened to Mary. Only that person that committed this act knows what happened. And that alone equates, in my mind, to reasonable doubt.
Jurors spend an intense 5 days poring over the evidence, but they still can't agree on a verdict. The judge is forced to declare a mistrial. Because the trial ends without a verdict, the prosecution can try Caitlin again. Within weeks, District Attorney Scott McNamara announces plans for a second trial. 6 months between trials also gives the prosecution time to hunt for more digital forensic evidence.
I knew that the case was going to rise and fall on the forensic evidence.
Between the two trials, one of the things we examined in more depth was Adam Yoder's laptop. And one of the things we found on his laptop was a backup of Caitlin Conley's phone from a time period just after Mary Yoder's death, but before the phone had been seized by the sheriff's office. The new evidence included Caitlin Conley using her phone to conduct research on lethal poisons, also accessing articles that showed the mathematical formulas computing Mary Yoder's weight in pounds to kilograms and then determining the amount of colchicine that would be necessary to kill someone of that weight.
There was an actual note in her phone that said, under the seat. So we could see through the notes in her phone that she was deciding where she was going to plant the colchicine bottle and the receipt in Adam Yoder's car.
Investigators have also discovered the Gmail password used to purchase the colchicine.
One of the things that they found was this password, Adam is gay, and so it just didn't make sense to us that Adam would make that his password. But it made perfect sense to us that a girlfriend that he had been in a toxic relationship with would make that the password.
She deleted thousands of images from her phone. So she did take a pretty significant amount of effort in ensuring that the research that led up to Mary Yoder's death was no longer present on her phone.
After the second 3-week trial, the jury begins deliberations.
I was angry, quite frankly, because I knew that that conviction was infirm. It was not possible, given the evidence.
2.5 years after murdering Mary Yoder, Caitlin Conley is sentenced to 23 years in prison.
I am firmly convinced that the justice system does work and that it did work in this case, and that finally we were able to get justice for Mary Yoder.